Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP, the Debian packaging flaw that leaves your server exposed. We go over the state of the internet report and hacking 27% of the web. Plus your great questions, a packed roundup, and much, much more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Hi, everyone, and welcome to TechSNAP. This is episode 294 of Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly systems network and administration podcast. We stream this episode live on Turkey Day, November 24th, 2016, at least here in the U.S. This episode is brought to you by our three fine sponsors, DigitalOcean, Ting, and IX Systems. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. Our live stream, why, that's powered by the incredible Scale Engine. Over at ScaleEngine.com, you should go check them out. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, the admin, the tech, and the teacher, Mr. Alan Jude. Hello, Alan. Happy Thursday.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Happy, average, normal, every other Thursday to you, Alan.
Yep.
So today's episode is one of those where Alan is like super prepared, and I'm looking forward to this because normally I would have jumped in and read through the entire doc by now, but I have had a heck of a morning. So this is all fresh for me. So it looks like we're going to start with Akamai. Are you ready to jump right in?
Yes.
Tell me about it.
Okay, so Akamai has published their latest quarterly State of the Internet report. I think we've talked about them once or twice before. What makes this one special is that they had permission from Krebs to go into detail about the denial of service attack they mitigated against his website.
Oh, interesting.
You know, the big Mario one that caused all the fracas.
Yes.
So yes, internet infrastructure giant Akamai last week released a special State of the Internet report. Normally, the quarterly accounting of noteworthy changes in distributed denial of service attacks doesn't delve into attacks on specific customers, right? They always edit out the details, so you never know who the attacks were against. But this latest Akamai report makes an exception in describing in great detail the record-sized attack against Krebs on security in September, the largest such assault that they had ever mitigated.
Right. That was huge. Huge.
Yeah. So Akamai says the same data we've shared here was made available to Krebs for his own reporting, and we received permission to name him and his site in the report.
That's cool.
So Akamai said the attack on September 20th was launched by just 24,000 infected systems, whereas we heard there were as many as like 500,000 machines infected with this botnet.
Yeah. Wait, so you're saying it wasn't 500,000? It was 24?
Yeah. They only, in the end, it looks like there were only 24,000 machines that were actually used in the attack that was at large, meaning if there are hundreds of thousands of them, that the attack could be much, much bigger. Now, it might be that they just picked the 24,000 that had the biggest connections. I don't know. At this point, it's a little unclear how many attacks they had done before this one to actually know the capability of their own botnet.
Okay.
They might not have known that they could do that much bandwidth, and so on. So the 24,000 machines were mostly hacked Internet of Things devices like digital video recorders and security cameras. They say the first quarter of 2016 marked a high point in the number of attacks peaking at more than 100 gigabits. They say this trend was matched in Q3 of 2016 with another 19 mega attacks. It's interesting that while the overall number of attacks fell by 8% quarter over quarter, the number of large attacks as well as the size of the biggest attacks grew significantly. So we actually see a slightly smaller number of attacks, but the ones that there were bigger. They say the magnitude of attacks seen during the final weeks were significantly larger than the majority of attacks Akamai sees on a regular basis. In fact, while the attack on September 20 was the largest attack ever mitigated by Akamai, the attack on September 22nd would have qualified for that record at any other time. So the one on the 20th was over 600-something gigabits, but the one on the 22nd was 555. So that would have been the biggest if the record hadn't been stolen 2 days before. What was interesting is that Akamai speculated that they also, Chris showed a graphic of it a minute ago, a plot of the history of attacks against Krebs over the last 4 years. And they just wondered, do the big spikes in that maybe correspond to specific stories? So Krebs has made that data available as a CSV, saying an observant reader can probably correlate clumps of attacks to specific stories covered by Krebs. Reporting on the dark side of cybercrime draws attention from people and organizations who are not afraid of using denial of service attacks to silence their detractors. So he says, in case any trenchant observer wishes to actually attempt that correlation, they've published a CSV file of all the attacks, which lists the date, duration, size, and type of attack used in the various attack campaigns against Krebs over the past 4 years. So it'd be really interesting to see if there are specific stories that spark specific attacks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just what I was thinking. And how much you want to bet the answer is yes. I'd bet a steak on it. Not a turkey dinner, though. Not a Thanksgiving turkey dinner. This is great when somebody who reports on it is the victim in a sense, because then he's willing to maybe give us a little more insights into it.
Yeah. And then there's some comments about the specific attack against Krebs' site in the report. They say, we haven't seen GRE, which is... I forget what that stands for now. It's something...
Oh, we know what it stands for. Hold on, I'm going to Google it real quick.
I know what it stands for. I'm just blanking on it just this second.
Graduate Record Examination?
Nope.
That's what Wikipedia says.
No, it's Gateway...
Yeah, I know.
No, Generic Routing Encapsulation.
Yeah, okay. Not Graduate Record Examinations.
So normally, the way services like Akamai work is they actually... the IP address you see when you try to go to Krebs is actually an Akamai address. So all traffic goes to various Akamai nodes all over the world. Then they scrub the traffic, and only the traffic that they think is legitimate actually gets sent back to Krebs' real web server over a GRE tunnel. So the attackers actually using GRE is actually kind of interesting. We haven't seen GRE play a major role in attacks until now. It's basically just a UDP plug with a layer 7 component targeting the GRE infrastructure. So while it's not new, it is actually kind of rare. So that's kind of interesting about it. They say overall, also Colombia was the top source of attack traffic. This is surprising because Colombia has not been a major source of attack traffic in the past. While Colombia only accounted for approximately 5% of the traffic in the Maria-based attacks, it accounted for nearly 15% of all source IPs in the last 4 attacks. A country that was suspiciously missing from the top 10 list was the US. But with regards to Maria, this may be due to just fewer people have those vulnerable devices in the US than, say, in Colombia. Rather than a conscious decision on the part of the attackers to not use systems in the U.S.
Well, and what systems are we talking about? Are we talking about Internet of Things, or are we talking about old XP boxes?
So this particular Internet of Things security camera devices, and it seems that the Chinese companies did a really good job of selling them in Colombia. Right.
Yeah. So, and I could, that's you forget when it's cameras. Boy, the market for that's everywhere, right? So.
Yeah, companies. Try specific things and end up creating, they end up finding a market in a particular country and doing a lot better there than elsewhere.
Yep. Yeah, so China also ranks pretty high. Look at that. In Q2 of 2016, China 56% of the source of DDoS attacks. So China does rank pretty high as well.
Yep.
Interesting, Mr. Jude. What else?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Is that it for the story?
Nope, sorry.
Okay.
Anyway.
I was like, maybe he's done then.
Nope. No, I got like a whole lot more to go here. Anyway, there are a few distinctive programming characteristics we initially discovered in the lab when they were playing with this particular attack.
Oh, yeah?
And later confirmed. So they made some suppositions about how Maria worked and what it was doing. But then eventually the source code came out and they were able to actually confirm their suspicions. Which has helped identify Maria-based traffic. So they had some ideas that they thought, all right, if we see this particular thing, it looks like it's definitely from Maria, but they weren't 100% sure, but they were able to prove it once the details came out and they had the source code. Yeah.
That makes sense.
They say, at the end of the day, what Maria really brings to the table is a reasonably well-written and extensible code base. It's unknown as to what Maria may bring in the foreseeable future, but it is clear that it paved the way for other malicious actors to create variants that improve on the foundation that was already there. So, it turns out Maria, on top of being open sourced, was actually written in such a way that was relatively easy to augment and keep going with.
I see Alan live updating show notes as he does the show.
Anyway, so I have a link here. So if you follow the link on Krebs' site to get this report from Akamai, they want a whole bunch of silly information and so on. But I managed to actually get the URL to the raw PDF file.
Ooh,
and
nice.
provide the link there so that you don't have to get phone calls from Akamai trying to sell you DDoS protection.
Yeah, really. That's cool. Thanks.
Then I skimmed the rest of the report, the non-Krebs specific thing, and found a couple other interesting details. They say last quarter we reported a 276% increase in NTP attacks compared to Q2 of 2015, because about Q3 of 2015 is when the NTP thing really took off, I think. This quarter we analyzed NTP trends over 2 years and have noticed shrinking capability for NTP reflection. So in particular, that's good to see that the amount of reflected NTP attacks is falling off as people secure their NTP servers and we get away from having this problem.
Yeah, that's for sure, especially because it was taking off so fast initially. Now, do you think it's a matter of securing the NTP servers, or do you think it's a matter of ISPs and networks not allowing traffic that wasn't sourced from their network to go out their network?
It's definitely people securing NTP because BCP 38 is not happening at all. Now, there's I forget the name of the group now, but there's a group that's been going around purposely doing like single packet reflection attacks against every IP address on NTP.
Yeah.
Finding the ones that succeed and sending an email explaining,
hey there,
what
by
the
the
problem
way,
is, how to fix it. So basically, sending abuse complaints. Because I end up getting a customer server, the BM, like the management interface, like the IPMI thing that's separate from the actual computer. Had a misconfigured NTP. And was basically allowing a reflection attack.
And there's just somebody, hey there, by the way, your fly's down. Might want to fix that kind of thing.
So in this case, it was actually when they got the report, the customer powered off their server to make sure it wouldn't be used as part of the attack until they could fix it. And that doesn't stop the BMC. So they're like, how can my server be attacking people? I turned it off. It's like, well, it's the second computer in your computer that's doing this. So firmware update solved that.
Yeah. That's good. Good. Yeah, I was just trying to look at how you sign up for the report right here because I wanted to see if I could display some of it. And oh my gosh, all the things Akamai wants to know all of the things. They want my job, my company, my email, my phone number.
When you try to type in your company, it even has autocomplete for a huge list of big companies.
No way, really? That's awful. Let's see.
Like I just started typing random letters and it is trying to autocomplete. It was like DEF Germany, blah blah blah. I'm like, what?
I'm not on this list. Oh no, I must be small.
But anyway, they also found some interesting other trends.
Oh yeah.
Web attack metrics around the European Football Cup Championship game and the Olympic Summer Games, as analyzed in the web application attack spotlight, show us that while malicious actors take advantage of high-profile events to do attacks and become famous or whatever, trying to disrupt major events, there's also a lull that indicates they might actually like to watch the events.
No.
So if you look at page 26 of the report there, the one that's actually labeled 26, it might not actually be 26 in the PDF, but...
Okay, I'm going to go... Hold on. Oh, that's right. You linked it in the show notes. Jeez, I was sitting there trying to sign up for it like a dork. I forgot. I have access to the show notes while the show's live. Okay, yep. I got it.
Yeah.
And which page? 26, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
So during the Olympic Summer Games in Brazil this past summer, they have a graph of the number of attacks launched this quarter versus last quarter.
Boy, look at all these fancy graphics they have, Alan. Just about every damn page has nice... Oh, lightning. They got lightning strikes. Yeah. Okay, here you go. I think this is probably the one you're looking for right here.
There.
No, this is 26.
Look at the bottom of the page.
Oh, yeah. I'm going by the PDF counter. All right, and here you go. Here's 26.
There it is. So you see, it's about the same between all the quarters, and then all of a sudden in that middle one, the number of attacks during the Olympics from being launched from Brazil
went way down.
Almost none. Turns out everybody in Brazil was at the Olympics.
I guess that could be legit. It could, or maybe they. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe
it's like all European hackers stopped their activities while.
But don't you think all the people traveling there and visiting there, just all of it, there would be more traffic? It almost makes me wonder if they did something at the country level.
They're doing other things like targeting tourists instead of targeting
outbound web outside web apps, and they're going after people's Android devices and their local computers and laptops and.
Or maybe they just really wanted to watch the Olympics.
Yeah.
But I can definitely see a lot of European attackers taking the time off to watch a big sports ball game.
Nice, I suppose so.
Yeah. They also show that application layer DDoS attacks. So actually doing things like, get head, post put type things. So basically trying to overwhelm not the network by sending too much traffic, but actually trying to overwhelm individual applications, like trying to take out the web server by just opening a whole bunch of connections and keeping them open. Or one we saw recently was doing a post so that it would all the regular requests where you're trying to read-only stuff from a website are all cached by the CDN. And so one attacker was basically doing a post that required a whole bunch of work done by the backend, and that would go from all over the CDN, it would all go back to the actual origin servers and cause a lot of load. But anyway, attacks are actually targeting the application layer and basically trying to break the web server or something, or the application, rather than just trying to flood the network and knock the whole machine offline, accounted for only 1.66% of all denial of service attacks seen during this quarter.
Wow, that's
basically 98% of all attacks targeted the infrastructure layer. So basically just IP, TCP, UDP, and just trying to.
That's surprising because that seems like it actually takes more raw horsepower than just to go after a flaky application.
It takes a lot less. Generally you have to kind of customize an application layer attack to target a specific application or server,
and maybe even the version potentially of that application and server.
Yes, and also with things like Amazon auto scaling or DigitalOcean or whatever, you can spin up more machines to handle the load. Now that's a different kind of denial of service attack where you can actually take the website out by running up their droplet bill by making them launch hundreds of droplets to be able to deal with the load or whatever.
Boy, you'd have, that seems like, though, that's probably you really have to go after somebody like on AWS or Rackspace to really.
Yeah, but, how many startups are on AWS? You could definitely run a couple of startups out of money by just attacking them in a particular way. I'm trying to remember the one that I might have almost accidentally done that to.
Really?
It was called like Wunderlist or something. I forget what it was, but they had a thing and you got points for clicking. And whoever clicked the most, they had like a top 10 leaderboard. Do you remember this? It was a while ago. Anyway, my business partner and I started playing with it and using like 100 servers with different IP addresses to avoid their blocking and so on. And just got like millions of clicks by, faking out the way they were counting the clicks.
Yeah.
And eventually we got an email. I was like, okay, you win. Stop it. I don't think we were actually causing them to spin up more Amazon instances because we were careful not to send too many requests per second. But
it's funny.
Yeah, you could easily do that to a couple of places. And interesting other thing they found is repeat DDoS attacks by target. After a slight downturn in Q2 of 2016, the average number of DDoS attacks increased to an average of 30 attacks per target, as shown in Figure 2-13. I don't know which page that's on, but not a big deal. But they say this statistic reflects that once an organization has been attacked, there's a high probability that they will be attacked again. In particular, they saw that, oftentimes part of it might be that the attack starts and then stops and they wait a little bit and then they start it again, but also just means that, they might do it repeatedly. Yeah. I found that interesting as well.
That might be because maybe you're a group that there's a group that particularly focused on you.
If there's a reason to attack you, then that reason probably doesn't go away after 2 days when they're at the end of the first attack.
Yeah.
But also, some of them are ransom type things. Well, if you pay the ransom, why wouldn't they attack you again a week later and for an even higher ransom? Right? Then lastly, looking at the actual application layer attacks that actually, or the type of attacks that happen against web applications. Now, this is more not DDoS attacks, but actually trying to break the application or whatever, or rather take over the machine, things like that. They found that SQL injection accounts for 49% of all attacks that Akamai blocked. As we would expect, SQL injection is the most popular way to take over an application or break into it or steal its database. And then you have local file inclusion, which is about 40%. This is where you trick a PHP script or some other language into running a file you uploaded. Like, most websites will let you upload a JPEG your profile picture or something. And if that file happens to actually be, some source code uploaded, just named .jpeg, and then you can cause it to read that file and try to run it as PHP script, then you can run your own code in the application. And once you're doing that, that's remote code injection. You can tell it to do whatever you want it to do. That'll come in very important in a minute when we talk about the next story.
In our next story.
But anyway, so yeah, SQL injection is basically half of all attacks, and local file inclusion is the next 40%. Leaving 6% for cross-site scripting, and then 2% for a bunch of the other little stuff.
Okay. So LFI, local file injection, that's what LFI stands for in this graph?
Local file inclusion.
Inclusion.
Yeah. So basically, this causes an application to read some file that's on the hard drive of the server and run it as
like
code.
the JPEGs.
Yeah. Or some of them, some of them are as simple as getting a web application to spit out etc password so that you can just see what users exist on the machine, so that you can target your SSH brute forcing against them. It's like, oh, look, there's a user named Andrew. Let's, I bet his password is Andrew, or something like that.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting report with more details than we would normally get.
Yeah, it's like a 40-page report. People should definitely go, read it and see some of those stuff. And like Chris said, there's a bunch of really fancy graphs in there.
Mm-hmm. And Alan's got the direct link in the show notes. So you don't have to give them your second child in order to get access to the PDF. Let's take a moment and talk about DigitalOcean. First sponsor right here on the TechSNAP program, DigitalOcean.com, and use our promo code SNAPOcean. That's one word, lowercase, and you apply it to your account. Even with an existing account, if you've never taken advantage of our promo code, you might give it a shot. You get a $10 credit. And the reason why I mention this is I want to encourage you to play around with DigitalOcean because it's a platform that is extremely unique in how easy it is to get started, how quick it is to do so, and how low it costs. So I'll give you an example. That $10 credit when you use the promo code SNAPOcean, you could get a $5 rig, so you could run it for free for 2 months for free. But check this out. Look at their pricing page and look at the hourly pricing. 3 cents an hour for 2 gigs of RAM, a 2-core processor, 40 gigabyte SSD, and 3 terabytes of transfer. Now they have great connections, 40 gigabit connections coming into the hypervisors. The machines are all SSD based, regardless of which one you get. They also have high memory if you want that, like up to 220 something gigabytes of RAM. They have block storage. You can attach up to 16 terabytes if you want of SSD based storage. And of course, you can run FreeBSD on there, Fedora, Debian, CentOS, CoreOS, and Ubuntu. They have a really nice interface to manage all of it. It makes it easy to do things like manage your DNS, your SSH key, set up multiple droplets, backup, snapshot templates, all of the things you need for peace of mind. So much simpler. Even just for things like before I do a WordPress update, why not just do a snapshot? I think if you really want to cook with gas, like I love this idea. I don't know if I have it actively implemented anywhere. I'll make that caveat. But I have heard from multiple listeners who use the API at DigitalOcean, and they tie it in with their package manager, and they can actually have their package manager create a snapshot before they do a big upgrade. It creates a DigitalOcean snapshot of their droplet. It then does the package upgrade, and they can revert right back if they want. The API is so nice because tools like that are already created because the API is great, it's straightforward, people just jumped all over it. And you can look at it too, and then to top all of it off, like the delicious sprinkles on top of whatever you like sprinkles on top of, they have fantastic documentation and tutorials. And look at this one.
Well, with the snapshots.
Oh, yeah.
Because they have floating IP addresses, you can have your web application use that static floating IP address and move it between machines. So when you want to do the upgrade, you can snapshot the machine as it is working, then make a new machine out of that snapshot.
Totally.
Do the upgrade on it, and then move your IP address over to that, run your application off the upgraded one, keep the other one around for a little bit, and, it didn't work, flip the IP back, you're back instantly on the other one while you try to fix it. Or maybe throw that away and start off the snapshot again and do the upgrade differently and try it, and then move the IP address over, and be able to bounce back and forth.
That's so cool. By the way, here's a good...
Temporarily, I need a second machine. Boom, done.
Yeah, just a little extra oomph. I just saw they posted this 20 hours ago, how to install Git on FreeBSD 11. There's a new tutorial up at the DigitalOcean site. You can check them out. You can play around with FreeBSD. Just use our promo code SNAPOcean. You get a $10 credit and try doing something useful. If you really want to play around with ZFS, you could also do a FreeBSD droplet, start messing around with the block storage, and think about the flexibility which you could do there. You could really play around with some pretty cool stuff. And with our $10 credit, you could probably get in for days and days and days, really bang it around and really get your hands on it. DigitalOcean.com, use our promo code SNAPOcean.
You can get the actual like droplet local storage on ZFS as well. So if you spin up, when you create an image of FreeBSD, it has the different versions, but also there'll be like 11.0, which will use UFS, or 11.0 ZFS, which will have ZFS even for the base system, so that you can take advantage of snapshotting the whole thing without having to actually use DigitalOcean's snapshotting thing.
Yeah, use the file system level stuff.
Reboot and so on. This will allow you to snapshot files and be able to restore one individual file from a snapshot, whereas the DigitalOcean one is, you'd have to clone the snapshot into a new virtual machine, start it up, and then copy the file off or whatever.
Plus,
it's a great way to get to play with ZFS.
For me, too, like I could play in configurations I could never financially actually do with physical hardware here at the studio, but I could, with up to 16 terabytes of block storage, I can slice and dice that.
Well, that's per block device, so I think you can create multiple of those.
Yeah.
So you can be like, I just, for an hour or two, I just want to play with 100 terabytes.
Yeah. So thanks, DigitalOcean, for sponsoring this very Turkey edition of the TechSNAP program. So let's talk about our next story, Mr. Jude. So I have no idea what this even is. Is your server Nginxed? What is this?
Nginxed.
Nginxed. Okay.
Jinxed, right?
Jinxed, like Jinx, you owe me a Coke?
Yes. Yes, exactly like that.
Okay, tell me about this.
Yeah. So
fancy website they
flaw.
have.
Yes. It turns out there's a flaw in the way Debian, and therefore Ubuntu, package Nginx, the web server, which can allow your server to be compromised, like entirely rooted and owned. And there's even a video.
But nobody uses Ubuntu or Nginx, so this is not a big deal.
So the flaw allows an attacker who has managed to gain control of a web application, like say WordPress, or if that local file inclusion stuff we just talked about, or basically if you can get the ability to run commands as the user that the application runs as. So this is whether it's Python, Ruby, Node, PHP, whatever. But if you manage to actually get the application to run a couple of commands for you, then you can take over the entire machine. So normally, if you manage to compromise a WordPress, all you can do is modify files that the www-data user has access to, which, depending on how WordPress is set up, that could be locked down so they can't do anything except for the uploads directory, or it could be slightly more open so that WordPress can upgrade itself when it's running or whatever. But then all you can do is really screw up that one WordPress. You're not supposed to be able to root the box. But small mistake on Debian's part, and watch what happens. So Nginx web server packaging on Debian-based distributions such as Debian and Ubuntu was found to create log directories with insecure permissions, which can be exploited by a malicious local attacker to escalate their privilege from the Nginx web user, www-data, to root. So the vulnerability can be easily exploited by attackers who have managed to compromise a web application hosted on an Nginx server and gain access to the www-data account, as it would allow them to escalate the privilege further to root access and fully compromise the system. So the attack flow works like this. First, you have to compromise the web application.
Okay.
So wait 2 days, new WordPress vulnerability, go.
Yeah. Check.
Then you have to run this exploit that they've designed as the www-data user, which is pretty easy. So what you do, basically, you create a file /tmp/priv-esc-lib, so privilege escalation library, which is basically a text file with a couple of lines of C code in it. Then you run the command to compile that, which you can do as a regular unprivileged user. Then you install your own low privilege shell. So you could just copy bin bash, or you could put your own exploit in the directory or whatever. But you create /tmp nginx root sh. So this will be the root shell. So right now it's just a regular, it could be a binary or a text file, and it's if you try to run it, you'll run it as you, the www-data user, and you won't be able to do much. Now you take advantage of the permission mistake that was made on the var-log nginx directory. So this directory is made writable by the www-data user, where it should probably only be writable by root. So what you do is you go to the var-log nginx directory and you delete the nginx-error.log and replace it with a symlink to etc ld.so.preload. This is a configuration file that tells the linker what libraries it should preload before actually going to the list of libraries that an application wants to use and using them. It's a way to basically override functionality built into programs to make them use different libraries. Normally, that file probably doesn't even exist. But you create varlog nginx, nginx-error.log as a symlink to that file. Now you have to wait for nginx to be restarted or for log rotate to tell nginx to reopen its log files. This probably happens at least once a day, if not more, right? Sometimes log rotate will look for the log being over a certain size, so you can maybe speed it up by doing a whole bunch of requests to the website for invalid URLs, so they get logged to the error log or something. But anyway, you just wait a little bit, and then nginx gets restarted or rehashed, and it will then try to create that error log file because it doesn't currently exist. And it will end up following that symlink and creating the file rather than calling varlog nginx-error.log. It will create etc.ld.so.preload. And because the children of nginx need to be able to write to the log file, the permissions will be such that the www-data user can write to it. So nginx's process's root is creating this file and then changing the permissions so that its children can write to it, which is what you want to happen because normally your varlog nginx directory is owned by root and not writable by anybody else. And then nginx will create the log file in there and change the permissions so that its children can write to the log. But the varlog nginx directory set up by the Debian package is owned by the www-data user, which then can erase the error log and symlink it to something. So anyway, so now we have this empty file, etc.ld.so.preload, that's writable by the www-data user. So you, the attacker, now add a line to that file that says, /tmp/privesklib.so, the library we compiled earlier. So now any program that runs is going to load this library and try to run whatever code is in it before it actually finishes its own whatever it's going to do. So then we find a setuid binary, like say sudo, right? So now sudo, because it's setuid, when you run it, it's always run as root. And then sudo contains in it the logic that decides whether it wants to let you do stuff as root or not, right? So it reads this config file and says, hey, www-data is not on the sudo list, piss off. But it's already too late. Because when sudo loaded and executed that privilege escalation library, the code in there found tmp nginx root sh, modded it so that it's setuid root, change the ownership so it's owned by root, and set it to be setuid. So now anybody who runs that binary, which is allowed to be run by anybody now because they set the permissions to 4777, when they run that binary, it won't run as their user. It will run as the user who owns the file, which is root. So now all the attacker has to do as www-data is run tmp nginx root sh, and they'll be running bin dash as root. And then they can do whatever they want on the server. It's now their server, not your server anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a fairly straightforward attack. And it doesn't happen on most other operating systems because the permissions would be set correctly.
Yeah.
It was just a simple mistake like that.
Didn't we just recently talk about a packaging problem that...
I think it might have been this one just without all the detail.
Okay. Yeah.
Jeez, it seemed familiar to me as well. Yeah. Now, separately, I almost wonder if Nginx, also as kind of a defense against this, should open its log files with the flag nofollow so it won't follow symbolic links, so that this can't happen. But I can also see people using a symlink somewhere in the path for the log file as a legitimate thing.
I suppose so.
Yeah. But
yeah,
at the same time, it kind of seems like, it shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Well, so if I am on Debian or Ubuntu right now, aside from making sure that all of my web applications are fully up to date, is there anything else you advise for people?
Right. So this has been fixed already. So if you're on Debian, you want to make sure you have Nginx. Sadly, apparently their latest version of Nginx is 1.6.2 2-5, Deb8U3. So basically, if you get the latest version of the package from their stable repo or whatever, they fixed the package to set the permissions correctly on the directory.
Okay.
For Ubuntu 14.04, it's Nginx 1.4.6-1 Ubuntu 3.6.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. Yeah.
For 16.04, it's Nginx 1.10.0-0 Ubuntu 0.16.04.3.
So if you're on 14.10, you're not getting a patch. For some reason, you have.
14.10 is out of support, right? It's not long-term support, and it's from 2 years ago.
So that would be, I know, but I'm just saying there are people that had it deployed. So if you're on that version, this is now an issue that's not going to get.
Wait, you also haven't been getting any security updates for Nginx, and you should probably upgrade to like 16.04.
You should stop it. Also, isn't 12.04 still supported? I think 12.04 still gets patched. I don't know.
Like last month.
I don't know. I thought it was still getting, but I can't keep it straight. I don't see a patch for it. Maybe they don't have the problem either.
Yeah, it's possible that theirs is old enough. But I'm pretty sure 12.04 would have expired like so many months after 16.04 came out, right? They only support you back 4 years.
No, you're going to make me Google it. You're going to make me Google it.
Yes.
Ubuntu support.
Anyway, the list of all the fixed versions is in the show notes or on the original webpage.
All right. So here we go.
So you want to make sure whatever directory Nginx is putting its log files in, the ownership on that should be root, and nobody other than root should be able to write to it. Nginx will create the files as root and then set the permission so that the child servers can actually write to it.
So here you go, right there. So 12.04 is supported until mid-2017, almost 2018.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So but I don't see it listed as fixed. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think it might just be old enough that they hadn't made the mistake.
Yeah. That's what I was wondering.
Slightly disturbing that apparently this has been around since 2014.
Also, that's a super old version of Nginx.
Yeah.
So just make sure that your logged directory is not writable by the www data user. That's really...
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so good one, Alan. I think that was the one that we sort of discussed, so it's good to get the details on it. Tell you about something else.
Before it was very vague.
TechSNAP.Ting.com, that's where you go to support the show and get a $25 credit off your first device, or in service if you bring a device. They support CDMA and GSM. So you might be able to, because that covers a lot of devices. This is what I want you to take away, though. Ting is mobile that makes sense. You just pay for what you use. It's $6 for the line, and then your minutes, your messages, and your megabytes. You go to TechSNAP.Ting.com and you get $25 in credit. It'll likely pay for more than your first month if you bring a device. If you ever get stuck, or if you want to give this to friends or family and don't want to have to play tech support, they have incredibly good customer service. They don't make you go through a big tree. You get to talk to an actual human being. And you can just pop in the SIM card to a device you already have, get on the Ting network, get set up. The SIM card's only $9, or you can get a device directly from them. And then you'll have great tools to manage it. And there could be some deals this week. In fact, Ting has an early Black Friday deal. It looks like you can get the Moto G4 Play for $124. It's a pretty capable compact phone with nice, clean Android that gets some updates. And, in fact, I don't know if it got the latest OS, but it gets the security updates. And no contract. You only pay for what you use. It's unlocked. You just use it. It's yours. Nice. TechSNAP.Ting.com is where you go. I also like their feature phone. They also have the Ansitel One Touch Fling for $20 right now. If you just want just a dead simple feature phone, that's a great way to go. The Home Phone Connect is back. That's really nice. You can route your cell services, I think, right? This is route your cell services over the internet, my bad. I'm glad I checked. This is kind of cool. It's got a little screen on there too. Get your old landline home phone onto the cellular network. So then you can use an old touch-tone phone.
If your mom doesn't want a cell phone, she likes her phone that hangs on the wall in the kitchen.
But if you're going to be talking on the phone, if you're going to be on the phone for a bit, sometimes those old landlines, they were nice. They were a little more comfortable.
Big hefty handset that's actually designed to hold instead of fit in your pocket. They don't have a battery that gets really hot.
That's the thing.
They just sweat the side of your face.
Yeah, exactly. And you can also go all the way up to the Pixel. If you want to put the Pixel on the Ting network, you can do it. I have the iPhone on there. I think that's a great way to go too, because then I don't worry about Google at all. It's up to you though, because it's just you get the service, you get the device, and you make it happen. It's just minutes, messages, and megabytes. $6 for the line. You want 10 lines? It's $6 for each one. It's so economical and it's so sweet, especially if you have Wi-Fi, like at work or at home, and you're on Wi-Fi a lot. Then by pinning my Spotify songs and downloading my podcast, my data usage is zilch. I love it. I have Google Photos set to back up when I'm on Wi-Fi too, so I don't bother blowing up cellular data with that, and everything works fantastic. For 3 devices, my bill is almost always under $40. TechSNAP.ting.com.
I wish I had something like that here, because my data usage in a given month is maybe 100 megabytes. It's like nothing. But we had a scheduled internet outage here in order to rearrange some fiber and so on. So I tethered my laptop to my phone. So I'd be able to IRC and talk to the person that was at the data center doing the jiggering of the fiber and so on. It was just more convenient than text messaging, because we both like having a keyboard type. But Windows decided to do a bunch of crap, and I ended up using like 400 megabytes of data. Now, with my carrier, that luckily my cap, I have 500 megabytes a month that I pay for, even though I don't use it most times. But with Ting, it would mean that I would only pay for that for the 1 month, and then I would go back to paying for just my 100 megabytes that I actually use or whatever.
Yeah.
So, if you have this one-time spike, there's no overage charges or anything. You just pay for what it is.
Yeah, very much so.
And the more you use, the cheaper it gets.
Yeah, and so if you use no data, you pay for no data. You would have paid $10. That's how much you would have paid if.
I pay a lot more than that for it right now, and I pay for 500 megabytes I never let you use.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Ting thing. $10 is what is all you would have been for the entire month. That's great. So check them out, TechSNAP.ting.com. You can try out the savings calculator and see how much you would save too. And a big thank you to Ting for sponsoring the TechSNAP program. Again, you can get our discount and support the show at TechSNAP.ting.com. Thank you, Ting, for sponsoring TechSNAP program. Okay, so moving on to our next news story. Hacking 27% of the web via WordPress auto update. That's attention grabber. That's what that is.
So this is from WordFence, which is a company that basically makes software to protect your WordPress. And basically they found a flaw with the way that the WordPress auto update system works, such that they could compromise the WordPress auto update server and make it distribute malware instead of WordPress updates, and make it break the auto update feature so all the infected WordPresses would stop auto updating, and so on. So yeah, this will be an interesting story. So they say, at WordFence, we continually look for security vulnerabilities in the third-party plugins and themes that are widely used by the WordPress community.
Thank goodness.
In addition to this research, we regularly examine WordPress core and the related WordPress.org systems. Recently, we discovered a major vulnerability that could have caused a mass compromise of the majority of all WordPress sites. The vulnerability we describe below may have allowed an attacker to use the WordPress auto update function, which is turned on by default, to deploy malware to up to 27% of all the websites in the world at once.
Wow. This is theoretical.
Well, they found a way to do it. They just didn't actually do it.
Okay. All right.
So it's not that theoretical.
Okay.
If this bug hadn't been fixed, somebody could have done this.
Okay.
It would have taken a bit of work, but somebody definitely could have done this. So the server that api.wordpress.org has an important role in the WordPress ecosystem. It releases automatic updates to WordPress websites. Every WordPress installation makes a request to this server about once an hour to check for plugins, themes, or WordPress core updates. Once an hour seems slightly frequent, honestly, but it must be a pretty beefy system to handle 27% of the web checking in every hour.
And it better be a small ping, too. That's...
Yep. The response from this server contains information about newer versions that may be available, including if the plugin, theme, or core needs to be updated automatically. It also includes a URL to download and install the software updates. If someone were to compromise this server, it would allow the attacker to supply their own URL to download and install software to WordPress websites automatically. This provides a way for an attacker to mass compromise WordPress websites through the auto update mechanism supplied by api.wordpress.org. This is all possible because WordPress itself provides no signature verification of the software being installed. it will trust any URL returned by the auto update API and any package that is supplied. So, WordPress pings this API and just blindly downloads whatever that API sends back. So that in itself seems like a problem because someone could man in middle this and compromise some WordPresses.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I'm guessing that's not really their threat model, but it seems like they should be doing some kind of signature verification. Now, that's a bit hard to do because they obviously don't want to pull in like GPG as a dependency or something, right? Anyway, going on in the article, they say, we described the technical details of a serious security vulnerability that we uncovered earlier this year that could compromise API.WordPress.org. We reported this vulnerability to the WordPress team via HackerOne, the bug bounty system. They fixed the vulnerability within a few hours of acknowledging the report. They've also awarded WordFence's lead developer, Matt Berry, a bounty for discovering and reporting the issue. So API.WordPress.org has a GitHub webhook that allows WordPress core developers to sync their code to the WordPress.org SVN repository. This allows them to use GitHub as their source code repository. Then, when they commit a change to GitHub, GitHub reaches out and hits a URL at api.wordpress.org, which then triggers a process on api.wordpress.org that will download that code and push out the update. So the URL that GitHub contacts at api.wordpress.org is called a webhook and is written in PHP. The PHP in this webhook is open source and can be found in the repository. We analyzed this code and found a vulnerability that could allow an attacker to execute their own code on api.wordpress.org and gain access to api.wordpress.org. This is called remote code execution, or RCE. There's actually kind of two problems here.
Okay.
If we can bypass the webhook authentication mechanism, so the webhook does actually check that the message it's getting is really from GitHub and not somebody pretending to be GitHub. But if you're able to get around that, there's post parameters from the GitHub project URL that are passed unescaped to shell exec, which allows us to execute shell commands on api.wordpress.org. So if you can get by the authentication system, you just put whatever command you want in and it ends up running it on the shell without running the escape stuff. So, while the command is actually trying to run is like svn update and then the URL or whatever, if you just put a semicolon and then some other command, it will run that. So, you could just put the command the URL you want to download is semicolon rm-rf/, right? And then the svn command will run without a URL and just throw an error or whatever, and then it will immediately run your rm command as whatever user PHP is running as. And you could then compromise the server and put other files in place or make it check out from your GitHub repo where you have a different set of code put in or whatever you want to do. So there is built-in security in the system. GitHub takes the JSON data they're about to send, hashes it plus a shared secret token, and submits the hash along with the data. On the receiving side, they take all the JSON and their copy of the shared secret, hash those together, and compare the two hashes.
Okay.
Only if they match does it go forward. So this means it will only accept JSON from somebody else who knows the secret password. And ideally, that's going to be just api.wordpress.com and GitHub. Nobody else knows it, so nobody else can fake this out. There's a small catch, though. GitHub uses SHA-1 to generate the hash, which is probably not great, but it's more than enough in this case.
Okay.
And supplies the signature in a header. So there's xhub signature, SHA-1 equals the hash. The webhook extracts both the algorithm, in this case SHA-1, and the hash to verify the signature. The vulnerability here lies in the fact that the code will use the hash function supplied by the client, in this case GitHub. But it also means it will use the one supplied by an attacker. That means that whether it's GitHub or an attacker hitting the webhook, the person hitting the webhook gets to specify which hashing algorithm is used to verify the authenticity of the message. So instead of SHA-1, I could use something else that maybe is more prone to collisions. The challenge here is to somehow fool the webhook into thinking that we know the shared secret that only GitHub knows. This means we need to send a hash with our message that checks out, that when they hash with their secret password, our JSON hashed with a fake secret password comes out to the same hash, a collision. The chances of that with SHA-1 are really remote, but we'll get into that. Anyway, in other words, it appears to be a hash of the message that we're sending and the secret value that only API.wordpress.org and GitHub know, the shared secret, but really it's just a hash collision. As we pointed out above, the webhook lets us choose our own hashing algorithm. So PHP provides a number of non-cryptographically secure hashing algorithms like CRC32, FNV32, and Adler32, which generate 32-bit hashes versus the expected 160-bit hash from SHA-1, or say 256 from SHA-256, and so on. These hashing functions are checksums that are designed to catch data transmission errors and be highly performant with large inputs. Right? Like CRC32 isn't about making sure that the message hasn't been changed. It's about detecting like a single bit got screwed up, and knowing that it's not meant for cryptographic security. It's meant to just check and make sure that the message didn't get slightly scrambled during transmission. They're not meant to provide the security. So instead of having to brute force a 160-bit hash, which would be 1.46 times 10 with 48 zeros after it. So just imagine a number with 48 zeros. That's a really big number, right? You only have to brute force 32 bits, which is only 4 billion possibilities, which is still kind of a lot, but a lot easier than 48 zeros. Of these weak algorithms, the one that stood out the most was Adler32, because it is actually just two 16-bit hashing functions concatenated together. Not only are the total number of hashes limited, 16 bits is only 65,000 combinations, but there's also significant non-uniformity in the hash space. So with a proper cryptographic hash, like say SHA-256, if you provide a very, very large number of inputs and graph how many of them start with each of the different bits, you'll see that it's relatively uniform. Basically, it gets spread out very evenly, right? If you divide up into buckets based on like the first character of the hash or the first three characters of the hash, or depending on how many different hashes you have, and graph them, it'd be a relatively straight line. There'd be maybe a little bit of variance, but in general, as you change the input, it's going to be evenly distributed across all the buckets. With Adler32, it's not. This results in many hashes being the same, even though they were supplied with different inputs. The distribution of possible checksum values is similar to rolling a dice, where 7 is the most likely outcome, the median value, and the possibility of rolling any value in that range would work its way out from the median value. So it's kind of like a pyramid shape, right? There's the most common value in the middle, and then one on either side of that, plus 1 or minus 1, is the second highest, and then down and away. So meaning that the probability of rolling a 2 or a 12 is really low, whereas rolling a 7 is going to happen a lot, kind of that spread. So using this, they were able to develop a proof of concept that they supplied in the report. They have all the source code and everything that utilizes this non-uniformity to create a profile of the most common significant bits in each 16-bit hash generated by the Adler32 algorithm. Using this, we were able to reduce the amount of requests that they would have to make to the API from 2 to the power of 32, which is 4 billion. Although, they might find it on the third try, but the chances that are, they would probably have to do at least half the key space before they would have a good chance of finding the one that worked. So instead of having to do billions of requests, it looks like it will take approximately 100,000 to 400,000 requests until they stumble on a collision and trick the API.wordpress.org into thinking, hey, check out this code. It's definitely legitimate.
Okay. Wow.
When it's not.
Wow. And that's not a lot.
Yeah, it's like 100,000 to 400,000 is kind of a lot, but if you figure, well,
it doesn't check every hour?
Right. Yeah. So, it'd be relatively easy to hide, maybe 1,000 requests an hour and then you're only talking about 400 hours. Or, if you bump that up to, say, 1,000 requests a second, that'll only take 400 seconds to go through them all.
Yeah.
And we know the API can handle something load like that because it's got every WordPress checking in once an hour, meaning it's already handling thousands of requests a second. So you'd be able to check a whole bunch of values relatively quickly, which you might want to do rather than spreading it out, because maybe it will raise an alarm. But if you can do all of them in less than 10 minutes, then they won't have time to answer the alarm before you've already compromised everything. So there's, they left the details of actually doing the attack up to people, but they're getting that fixed anyway. Anyway, they say this is a far more manageable number of guesses that we need to send in to the webhook, which can be made over the course of a few hours. Once the webhook allows the request, the attack executes the shell command on api.wordpress.org, which gives us access to the underlying operating system, and we can do whatever we want. Basically, it can do a reverse shell out and give you access to whatever you could possibly want. From there, an attacker could conceivably create their own update for all WordPress websites and distribute a backdoor and other malicious code onto all those websites, and disable subsequent auto updates so that WordPress would lose the ability to deploy a fix. It's meaning that every WordPress would have to be manually fixed instead of having them auto update. And we all know that the reason they invented this auto update thing is because WordPress was not being updated on most of these machines, and it was causing a big problem, right? So we confidentially reported this vulnerability on September 2nd to Automatic, which is, I guess, the team that's behind the auto update thing. And they pushed a fix to the code repositories on September 7th. Presumably, the same fix had been deployed in production before they pushed it to the code repository. They say, we still consider api.wordpress.org as a single point of failure when distributing WordPress core plugin and theme updates. We've made attempts to start a conversation with the members of the automatic security team about improving the security posture of the automatic update system, but we have not yet received a response. It definitely seems like they should be doing a couple of things to make sure that, that it's not a man-in-the-middle attack, and that they're actually, in the end, getting the updates are being checked for authenticity, so that I can't just fool your WordPress into accepting my URL.
Now I'm all worried it's a WordPress site, and I feel like now I got to go through another paranoia round.
I know.
That's a really good amount. That's a really good set of work from WordFence. That's some seriously valuable, hats off, good work kind of stuff that's going to help improve the security of the WordPress community. So congratulations. Thanks, WordPress. Or WordFence, I should say. Because a lot of times these companies out there are kind of bogus. It sounds like they're actually doing some real work. So that's pretty cool. Any other thoughts on that story, Mr. Jude?
Nope, that's it for now.
Well, if you're a WordPress admin or curious about more, Alan has notes in the show notes. Just go over to Jupiter Broadcasting and look for episode 294 of the TechSNAP program. And he has it all copiously noted right there, like a gentleman. I'll tell you about IX Systems, ixsystems.com/TechSNAP. Our last sponsor this week on the show. IX Systems is the builders of these incredible systems for your workload, whether it be just a small office or up to an incredible scale. They're built around these fantastic Intel processors. At ixsystems.com/TechSNAP, you go there to learn more and support the page. Then go check out their new fancy front page. Their new website's looking real good. And I noticed for the holidays, they've also posted a FreeNAS Mini Beta 2. And they have a blog post here. With pictures now, I note. Ever since I complained, they started adding the pictures.
Yeah, they have they had one. Did you get to play with the one they had at MeetBSD?
Yeah, I did. And I also watched Jordan's presentation too.
I missed that one. I was doing Let's Encrypt stuff for the FreeBSD cluster team.
It was pretty neat because he VPN'd into his office where he had a system attached to a system with 45 disks or something. I mean, it was a lot of disks. It was obviously some pretty cool IX gear. And he just started graphically tossing hard drives around like a maniac, Alan, creating ZFS wizardry. And it was pretty cool. And you can read more about FreeNAS 10 over at the IX blog. Start by going to ixsystems.com/TechSNAP. They also have their white paper there where you can learn more about it and sort of grease the wheels up the chain. This is some great hardware. They're going to work with you to build the exact rig you need for your job. It's actually the only time I've worked with a hardware company where I've honestly, legitimately, not just found the sales process to be good, but actually appreciated the sales process. Mm-hmm. Honest to God.
Well, because you're talking to an engineer who likes to build servers.
Yeah, it's a two-way dialogue, and it's extremely refreshing, and it's just the beginning of the relationship with iX Systems. ixsystems.com/TechSNAP. That's the place to go to support the show. Grab the white paper and learn more. ixsystems.com/TechSNAP. Incredible rigs built around those awesome Intel processors. Mm-hmm. So, speaking of things that are fancy and awesome, a little beard tells me that there is a new episode of the BSD Now show, episode 169, scheduling your net BSD.
Yes. They found, one of the stories is an interesting bug they found in the NetBSD CPU scheduler, where it sometimes doesn't, because of a rounding error, might not schedule enough work on the last CPU in your system, which can be a big deal if you only have 2 CPUs.
Oh, well, sure. I guess that makes sense. Yeah, and also
it mostly seems to come up in VMs because most people's machines have 4 more CPUs with hyperthreading and everything now. But if you create a VM with only 2 CPUs, it's like, why is the second CPU not doing very much work?
Do you also talk about your Let's Encrypt work that you just mentioned a minute ago?
Well, the work done by Peter Wem, but yes, we explain.
Okay. Okay.
Basically, what I was doing was learning that from him and how to do it because we're all in the same room, so it was easy to do. But yeah, so there's some cool Let's Encrypt stuff, how we actually use it at freebsd.org for all the machines that the cluster team manages. What other stories do we do? There's one about production-ready software that's really good. Ted Nginx is always writes good blog posts, and lots of
building
other
a cost-effective 100 gigabit firewall.
Yes. Yeah. How would you like to have a firewall that can push 100 gigabits a second?
All right. First, I need a connection, but yes,
they're going to do FreeBSD.
I would like that and the connection, please.
This is internal. This is for a supercomputer at NASA.
Good. All right, just leave it right there. That's a perfect tease. Episode 169 of the BSD Now program. Go grab it now because we're about halfway done. And I know your Turkey Day won't be complete with more Jude in your face. And it's a good point to go download the HD version and all its brilliance. And with that said, let's do the TechSNAP feedback. Thanks for sending your emails to techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com or popping that contact link at the top of the Jupiter Broadcasting website. You can also start a thread in our subreddit at techsnap.reddit.com. Now, Scott writes in with our first question this week, Alan, and it's about network tests. He says, we've currently been experiencing intermittent internet connectivity issues. Oh, man, that sounds... He puts it so nicely, but that's frustrating. My ISP refuses to believe it's their network or their modem. Besides using ping, what other tools can I use to test connectivity over time, since it, again, is intermittent, to prove that it's not on my network? I understand that I'll have to bypass all my network equipment and connect directly to their modem to prove this. Thanks for your help, Scott. What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Now, as an interactive tool, MTR, or Matt's traceroute, is really useful. It's basically... like running traceroute, but it does it constantly. So you basically get the latest, the average, the worst, the best, etc. ping for each hop through the traceroute, and it can show when the route changes over time. But that doesn't necessarily give you good logs, although it can give you good details on packet loss when it comes and goes and the percentage, but it doesn't necessarily tell you exactly when it starts and stops and so on. So for this, I like to use something like Nagios or Cacti or something and graph ping and packet loss and maybe number of hops and things like that over time so that you can see, it's stable. And then you see at exactly this time, it does this. And then eventually, sometimes you can even see patterns. Like I noticed that connecting to our one server in Chicago, starting at this time every day of the week, as prime time starts, the ping would get worse, and then it would get better after prime time ends. And then it'd be even worse on Thursdays and really bad on Friday, but not on Saturday or Sunday. And Monday was okay, but then Tuesday would get bad, and Wednesday worse, Thursday worse, Friday worse.
Earlier this year, we were having big problems with our Comcast connection. We were trying to figure out the source of it. And so by running ping tests what we were testing wasn't a loss of connectivity. So we weren't looking for drop packets. What we were looking for was an increase in response time. So that way we could try to figure out where. So what we would do is we started at our modem out, and we figured out by using trace path and trace route where the hops of the best we could figure out where the next hops were in our ISP's network. And we set up smoke ping and other tools. I forget what tool. Rikai, if you're listening, maybe you could drop the tool you use to do it from your desktop. It's smoke ping, and there's other tools that would measure the milliseconds response time, and as they went up, it would correspond to issues we would have with connectivity. And then we were able to give the ISP graphs and say, well, we don't know, we can't say it's us or you for sure, but here's what we see from our end. And when you're talking to a technician and they start seeing ping response times like that on a graph, that gets their wheels turning in their head. And so I know chat room also, there's probably Ping Plotter. That's one Rikai used, was Ping Plotter, and I used Smoke Ping, which I liked both of those a lot. So you can check that. Ping Plotter, I think, runs under Windows. So if you just want to put it from like on a Windows laptop or something like that and just hook it up right there, that could be just a really quick way to do it, Scott. So those are some things to try. Remember to consider testing not just packet loss, but whole packet response time. So Samuel writes in with what I think might be a success story. He says he fixed a slow FreeNAS issue. 5 months ago, in episode 269, he wrote in about having trouble with file transfers just stopping on him. I forgot to mention one important thing that will be revealed in just a little bit. After trying everything that Alan suggested and getting acceptable results, replacing the old 8-port Linksys gigabit switch with a retired HP Business Class 24-port switch, then going off and reading up on Oracle's documentation on ZFS, I decided to look at the hardware of the server. I removed all the RAM except for one stick of 4 gigabytes. It's ECC DDR3. I booted it up and it ran a file transfer. It was slow at 54 megabits, but it never stopped, even after 50 gigs of transfer. So now I removed the known good RAM and stuck in its brother and got the same results. I think what he's saying is I put one of the other sticks in.
And it was also good.
Yeah. Hold on. He got the same results. He had 5 sticks of RAM ranging in size of all tests, not even one would post. So he ended up having to test his RAM. I'm trying to like skim it down here because I just realized it's like 9 paragraphs. So he says he's put in 16 gigabytes of 1600 megahertz RAM, and now he's happy with 120 megabits transfer, and he hasn't had any trouble since. So it looks like he had some RAM that was 133 megahertz and some RAM that was 1600 megahertz, and now he's all standardized with 16 gigs of 1600 megahertz RAM. That's really awesome.
Mixing it should just all downclock to the same speed. I'm guessing his problem was actually one of the sticks maybe is bad.
Yeah. But that's an interesting thing that I don't know if we considered bad RAM when we were trying to troubleshoot a slow transfer.
No, but I guess if it was hanging the whole machine, then that is a real possibility. Yeah. I had a machine that was causing all kinds of weird stuff. Like we ran Yum and it would segfault. I was like, what? It was just doing a bunch of stuff on this video transcoding server we had just rented. And we were very confused. And then I fired up the management interface and booted memtest. And within 10 minutes, like, oh, bad RAM all over the place. I'm like, oh. And then sent that to the ISP with a screenshot and everything. Like, yep, we replaced both sticks of RAM. And your machine worked perfectly fine now.
All right. Good to know. And I'm glad we got Samuel's follow-up. Now we move on to Alex. He has his obligatory ZFS question / feature request. I love it. He says, hey, Alan and Chris, thanks for your dedication. I enjoy your content every single week. I wonder if these 2 features for ZFS are under development or if they are just impossible to realize. Let's get you chewing on this. Adding a single new drive to an existing pool. Adding a 4th drive to an existing RAID Z1. This could give more flexibility.
Okay, so adding a new drive to a pool is possible, but not to a VDAV. So a pool is made up of virtual devices. Virtual devices can be a single hard drive, a mirror of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 disks, or RAID Z of the various things, or it can be a log device or a cache device. So adding an additional drive you can do, but that has no redundancy and that would be bad. What you're asking about is adding a drive to an existing RAID Z, not possible. Mostly because the way RAID Z works is it lays out the blocks based on the width of the number of drives. So adding an extra one just doesn't work. It would require like rewriting everything. But because of the way things are checksummed, you can't just change the location of it without rewriting all the data. So yeah, if you want to be able to just add drives like 2 at a time, then mirrors are your best bet for flexibility. Otherwise, you have to add whole RAID Zs at a time. There's probably not going to be a way to fix that anytime soon. They are adding the ability to remove drives, but that only applies to single disks or mirrors.
Then you want a part 2?
Yes, go ahead with part 2.
Says, what about rebalancing the file system when adding additional storage devices? Alan already pointed out that new drives will be used more until they have filled into the same degree, resulting in a loss of throughput. It'd be nice to have command for just, doing this, rebalancing the drives. I think ButterFS has something called ButterFS balance. And then he makes a joke at me.
Yeah, and I think HammerFS and other files have something like that. There was originally a design for that that would basically be able to do both these features called block point rewrite, but it turns out it's really complicated to do. And it's basically, there's no one that's currently working on it because it's an especially gnarly problem. For the rebalancing, it's not that big of a deal anymore because the way the new the new allocation system works in very, very new ZFS that just came out, it changed away from trying to forcibly rebalance the loads to try to get to the drives getting to 90% full at the same time. It now instead allocates work to the drives as fast as it will do it to give you the best write speed.
Okay.
So even your half-full drives will still take a good amount of the writes and you won't lose that much bandwidth. But because the emptier, newer, less fragmented drives will be faster, they will get more of the data until eventually they get full enough that they slow down and balance with the other one. So the balancing is less of a performance issue than it used to be with the new allocation system that you'll find in like FreeBSD 11 and newer.
I think it's funny, we didn't even mean for all these to be ZFS questions. It's just how they kind of ended up. We do have a bunch of emails right now that I think we're going to try to bust through at some point. So if your question came in and we don't have it answered, it's not that we're only doing ZFS emails anymore. It's just that's what our Thanksgiving batch.
Just a lot of emails.
That's what the Thanksgiving batch was, and that's what we got to. But this next one's more, I think it's more about versatility of ZFS and less about specific backups, but we'll get to that. So Dave writes in, he says, "Hi, Chris and Alan. Oh, by the way, I should have said, I wanted to point out our last writer was from Austria, always cool. But Dave writes in, he says, "Hi, Chris and Alan. I was just listening to last 444, where Chris mentioned that Antigross Installer now has quite a bit of ZFS trickery. Since I had hosed my machine running Antigross, I decided to wipe it and maybe give it a try. He says, I also have a FreeNAS that I use for storage and backup. Is it possible to replicate the ZFS pool from my Antigross install to the ZFS on my FreeNAS server? If Antigross gets hosed again, how would I go about restoring the replica back to the disk in my laptop?" He says it's going to be a mirror of two 256 gig SSDs.
Yes, this is one of the great things about ZFS is that, yes, you can do replication between different operating systems. And even ZFS replication by default works with all versions of ZFS. If you do a ZFS send without any extra flags, it will make a stream that's compatible with even just old V28 versions of ZFS. So you don't have to worry about, the FreeNAS is a newer version of ZFS that has a couple more features. The replication still works between them. Now, if both support some of those features, you can enable them. I think there's -E for embedded blocks and -L for large blocks and a couple of extra settings. But if by default, if you don't do any of that, ZFS send stream is compatible with all versions. Oracle apparently has broken their compatibility off in their version, starting with V34 or something, sadly. But every version of ZFS you will find an open source thing. The ZFS send stream will be compatible with any of them. So you can go different versions and it's not going to cause you any problems.
Okay. Wow, that's great.
Yeah, you'll be able to do that. Now, for restoring, TrueOS has a built-in support in their installer. For Antigross, likely what you would do is you would do a new install or just lay out you basically create the partitions and set up ZFS, and then it can just sit there empty, or you could do a complete install, whichever way, and then just replicate it back like you sent it, and then it would just overwrite whatever. So yeah, partition your drives, create the empty ZFS pool, and then replicate it from the FreeNAS back into the Antigross. You can likely do this from a live CD or the installer, or if that's being difficult, you could literally just do a new install and then ZFS receive it back on top of it. So
Antigross has been working on this, and I think it's still, I would not advise using this yet. In testing here, the Beard ran into some issues, but they've been working on their installer for a full graphical setup to do different sophisticated ZFS configurations. One of the things that's kind of nice about it is it is very informational. So if you don't know what a term is, it has like a lot of information buttons next to the terms, and it brings up definitions and what they do. So it's a really cool. It's a really cool way to kind of, for a desktop installer, it's a cool way to do that. But I don't actually know if I'd say it's production ready yet. So you might consider setting up just your root and your basic disk configuration, and then configuring ZFS after installation, or experiment with it and see if it works for you. I mean, I guess if you're doing installation, it's not like you're going to lose data because you're already blowing the machine away. But just keep it ZFS,
you're not going to lose data unless you do it.
Yeah. That was a surprise batch of wow. We do have a bunch of other emails that we will try to get to that we'll mix it up probably next week. But honestly, you guys are just doing so many cool different things with your drive configurations out there. It's kind of neat to hear them all. So it's not like I really mind either. And we could always get some more questions and mix it up. If you got something you'd like to add to the show, go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact and choose TechSNAP from the dropdown. You can also participate in the subreddit at techsnap.reddit.com. But with the emails all done, that means it's time for the TechSNAP Roundup. Welcome to the TechSNAP Roundup. Yeah, that's what that crazy music means. Now, the Roundup are stories that just didn't fit at the top of the show, but we still wanted to go over them, give you some links to follow up on your own and read a little more after the show. And some of them came from different various sources on the internet, like our subreddit. I don't know if any of them did this week, actually.
Probably not, because they're all from me this week.
Yeah, all from Alan this week. So let's start with that. I have a Toyota Corolla. That's a great headline. All right. Good story.
So this is a one from the author of curl, the little library that everybody uses for, the command line tool and library everybody uses for everything.
Oh, now
it's a great way to interact with URLs.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got at the bottom of this page a bunch of interesting emails he's been getting lately. You want to just read like the top one there?
Hello, sir. I have the Avalon 2016 regarding the audio player. Why their delay between audio and video when connect through Bluetooth, and how to fix it? Here's another one. Hello, I'm using a new Ford Mondeo, the navigation system with the SD card FMTT 19449-FC Europe F4. I can read the card, but I cannot write on it. I want to add the card some POIs. Can you help me to do it? What is this?
So in most of these in-car entertainment systems nowadays, because they're using open source software like QNX or Linux or something, or who knows what the operating system is, but they have a bunch of software on there. The software for the nav system maybe uses curl to download updates or something. They have a little about page where they have to put all the open source licenses. Right? Because, if you look at the BSD licenses, like you have to reproduce this copyright statement in the documentation for your product. So just like we found on an episode of BSD Now, if you sitting in one of the new Jeeps and you go into there's an about screen in the touch screen, and you go to about and it's got a list of all the copyrights. And you see all these names I recognize as people I work with on the BSD projects. People are finding the curl one, and it contains an email address, not just a name. And so they're emailing him and their questions about the thing, not understanding that he didn't make the in-car entertainment software. He makes this library that everybody uses.
Hello, I have the Toyota Corolla with the multimedia system that you have. It's copyright. I need advice on how to use its GPS. Now I can't use it or see the maps, and I want to know how to add the Hebrew language. Oh, man. Yeah, that's funny. He's like, how do I even respond to this? He says, I have to say I rarely respond at all. I can't believe he ever responds. I'm surprised he still checks it, too. All right, next story in the roundup. There's another malicious link floating around that will cause any iOS device to freeze and then require a hard reset. I think, is it a video, Ellen? Is that what it is?
Yeah, so it's actually, like the other week when we talked about there's a JPEG that can infect your iOS device. Well, now there's one that a video link that will freeze your device.
What's going on here? That's crazy.
Just buggy software.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah. I'm looking at it. That's funny. Well, I suppose if I shouldn't play it, just in case it would crash somebody's iPhone. Here's another one. Walmart tackles food safety with a trial of the blockchain. This is an interesting
so using
one.
blockchain to store the data on the history of every device or every bit of food, so that if there's a food recall on a specific, so basically when they get reports from a bunch of their customers that they got sick off something they bought last week, they can correlate between all those customers and quickly find out what was the one thing they all bought. Oh, broccoli, salmonella, problem solved, whatever.
Okay.
Using the blockchain to keep this record of stuff so that they can handle food recalls better.
Now,
anyway, all the details are there on the Bloomberg article.
Yeah. So now, it looks like maybe a paper about attacking the Washington, D.C. internet voting system. Just a thing to talk about right after an election.
Yeah. Now, what was interesting with this one is they also hacked the security cameras in the data center. So if you go down a couple of pages near the bottom, they were able to tell that the admins hadn't figured out that they had hacked it yet by looking at their body language and facial expressions. And then they have pictures of what they look like after they were told that they had been hacked.
That is so funny. After learning of the attack. Yeah, you can see they do look a little more.
Or not really. I don't know. It didn't seem funny. Anyway, just the fact that they had the pictures of this, I thought made it quite an interesting
one. That is. Getting
the
access to the security camera is funny.
Yeah, it was. A tweet went by and it was just like the best thing I've read in a vulnerability assessment in a long time. It's like we could tell the admins were slightly upset when they found out.
Yeah. You know what else has people slightly upset? An Uber portal leaked names, phone numbers, and email addresses and unique identifiers in the Uber Central portal. That doesn't sound good.
Yeah, so it's the Uber Central portal was set up for businesses to be able to facilitate getting rides for their customers. So I guess this is like so the hotel can call your Uber for you or whatever.
I called an Uber for Noah while he was in town, so that way I could get him from point A to point B.
Yep. And things of that nature. And apparently you could get people's information.
Yeah, the unique ID of all the Uber users if you wanted it. All Uber users. That does seem like a big deal. And you can do bulk enumeration. That does seem like a really big deal. So I have a link in the show notes.
Information of every Uber user.
So how about this one? Mapping the attack methodology to do controls. What's this, Alan? Yes. What is this? PowerShell some shenanigans?
This is looking at a recent malware attack against a company and trying to figure out where you could break it. Mm-hmm. So it turns out in this one, it was a malicious Word doc being mailed around. So in this case, the execution chain is they get the email, they open the Word doc. The Word doc has a macro that forks off command.exe, which runs some PowerShell, which downloads and runs the malware. So when the user clicks on the attachment, it runs a macro that kicks off PowerShell or kicks off command/c PowerShell, new-object system.net.web client, download file, bad URL, store it to temp directory scsn sys.exe, and then start it. As we can see, the PowerShell, when it does a download, it doesn't put a user agent in. It doesn't say, hey, I'm PowerShell. So we can't easily just block outbound stuff saying,
hey there,
don't let any PowerShells do downloads.
Okay. PowerShell!
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of surprised it doesn't say Microsoft or PowerShell somewhere in the user agent.
Yeah. It just has nothing as far as we know.
It's just viewing a very, very basic constructed HTTP request. So just to map out the controls, we could do a couple of different things. So stopping delivery of the message, you have 5 options ordered based on money and complexity. Number 1 is hold attachments for X number of hours so that the antivirus can catch up. So any email with an attachment won't actually be delivered until it's been sitting around for a couple hours and maybe the virus scanner knows that it's a virus by then. Right?
Yeah.
Or you correlate, hey, why is this different file but with the same checksum being sent to all these different users? Other options are convert the file from Word to say PDF, because then it won't have a macro in it anymore, but the content will still maybe look right. You could mangle the macro in the file so that it doesn't work. You could sandbox the attachment before delivery so that it won't be able to do anything like that. Or you could prevent macros from running by maybe using a group policy object or something. So then your other options are disabling macros via group policy, blocking users from being able to use command.exe at all, like say use app locker policy to block command.exe. Number 4 is prevent PowerShell from running any unsigned scripts. So only scripts that have been signed by your domain controller will actually be allowed to run. Problem is, it turns out there's a lot of way to bypass that. So that's probably not going to help you that much. Prevent downloading the malware, right? Set up your firewall or whatever to sinkhole or proxy the requests so that anything going to these known bad URLs will be blocked. Problem is, new bad URLs show up constantly. So you're constantly going to be playing whack-a-mole rather than proactively stopping anything. Or prevent malware from running from the temporary directory. So, set up app locker so that anything in the temp directory won't be able to be run. Problem is, most installers and a lot of other things do that. But then again, your end users at an enterprise probably shouldn't be running random installers anyway. But anyway, so this exercise will have you prepare the answers and be able to prevent issues in the future. Maybe figure out that some of these will take maybe 10 hours of work or maybe cost X $100 to set up or whatever.
So our next story is kind of fun because we have a listener of the show who helps manage the Coca-Cola data center infrastructures, and Coca-Cola has an unbelievable amount of servers. I would not have guessed how many servers are required to run a Coke company, but they're a big company. So this headline's great. Coca-Cola doesn't keep its secret formula in the cloud. They got a lot of data in the cloud, but not the secret formula.
Everything to the cloud, but the secret formula, no, that's not going into the cloud.
Now, when they say cloud, though, I think they mean their own built cloud because they have.
It might be partly private cloud, but I think in particular there's a policy saying that their secret formula will never go in a public cloud.
This sounds like marketing to me. Their secret formula.
Yeah.
It's only in the head of a few of our founders.
Sugar, water.
Yeah. Although nobody does really get it quite right. There is that.
Well, when you make that comment about that, it really reminded me of recent Brian Cantrill talk. That actually it was the day after the U.S. election, he ditched his regular keynote that he was going to do and did a different one. And in particular, what he said is, what people didn't realize in the 90s when Walmart was killing off all the mom and pop stores, is that they weren't actually a retail company. They were a big data company. They figured out that, retail is just a statistics problem, right? And they figured out by having all this data and knowing where everything goes and how to do stuff, they would make more money. It's the opposite of, if you remember when we did the postmortem on Target Canada, when Target tried to come to Canada and botched all because their software was crap.
Yeah.
It's like, imagine if you were the opposite of that and you could make sure that the stuff was always on the shelf, but you never had too much of it sitting around in a warehouse, and that you analyze the traffic patterns of people and figure out if you put these things together, people buy them more.
Yeah.
Put this there and,
That makes sense. The reverse of that situation is a good way to put it.
Just randomly, if you've ever been walking through a Walmart that's not very busy or while they're restocking, you'll see these pieces of paper taped to a shelf that explains how the shelf must be laid out, what items must be where, and how,
I've never seen that.
There's been a lot of study into just the idea of how neatly they stock the shelves affects whether people want to buy certain products or not.
That makes sense. Visually appealing is important.
It's just random things that bound around in my head sometimes. It's like, I kind of wanted to just play with that kind of data science stuff. It's like convince a grocery store to give me all their sales data and be able to do stuff with it. Or then I was like, what if you could do some kind of tiered subscription-based grocery store thing? So it's like, figure out the things that people buy every week and have them agree to a subscription where they guarantee they'll buy it every week. And if they do, each week they continue to do so, it gets cheaper.
Amazon does, not the cheaper part, but they do have subscribe and save.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it's
probably that.
But you want it for grocery items too, which would be, I guess you can do some grocery items on Amazon.
Yeah. It's especially if you live where you live. Where I live, Amazon doesn't sell anything.
This is an interesting one. Kaspersky OS, their own, built up from the ground up, they say, based on a microkernel, not Linux OS based.
Maybe it's based on Minix?
I don't know.
Sure.
The only detail they do give you is it's not Linux. That's the only thing they say.
They say very specifically it didn't go anywhere near Linux.
Not even the slightest smell is the word they use.
But basically, it's not an OS you run on your computer. It's for switches and things like that.
Yeah. Kaspersky OS.
And that's always been the dream of a microkernel. Apparently, they spent 8 years developing it.
Comes with a sticker of Putin.
If it's not open source, I'm really not interested in it.
Yeah, but what if they include a sticker of Putin? You know, like with a shirt off or something.
No.
No? Oh. This is a quick one. Oracle is gobbling up DYN, after, that DDoS they had just like last month.
Yeah, well, I think it was more when the news came out, hey, it looks like Twitter and Reddit and all these other big websites all host their DNS with Dyn. Oracle's like, we'd like to get paid by all the big internet companies. Let's do that.
Yeah, maybe, right? It turned out to be good marketing for Dyn.
And, as we saw, Twitter's already switched to having their DNS across two different providers so that a denial of service attack not specifically targeting Twitter is unlikely to take out Twitter anymore.
So I guess on Monday it came out that there was a vulnerability in NTP. The code's been patched and released. But sounds like this could be, on a holiday week, this could be a hard one for people to get in.
You definitely want to go and patch that up real quick now.
Yeah, so special
exploits in the wild now.
Special TechSNAP bulletin because the exploits are live. They found the vulnerability on June 24th. And so people may be already working on stuff to exploit it. With a malformed packet at that. So, all right, how about this one? InPage, 0-day, used in attacks against big banks. InPage, publishing software used by apparently primarily Arabic-speaking nations. I did not realize that.
Yep. So like Urdu, Pashtun, and Arabic. So that's like Pakistan.
Yeah. I guess they used an exploit in the software to launch attacks against the financial institutions and government agencies in the region. More than 10 million InPage users in Pakistan and India alone. So there's also I've heard of it. So I mean, there's also a significant amount they say here in U.S., the UK, across Europe. Kaspersky Labs is the ones that also found this vulnerability. Speaking of Kaspersky OS,
yep,
that's interesting.
Using publishing software to break into the bank,
and they're using command and control servers. It looks like they found those. They've been compromising servers. This has been going on for a little bit. It looks like that is a particular nasty one. So if you know anyone that uses InPage, take a look at that. We'll have a link in the roundup because it looks like that gets. Basically, once you have it installed, they take over your whole machine using the Microsoft OLE system. That Microsoft OLE system has been getting banged on now since the day they implemented it in Windows. I swear. That has been the cause of so many problems. All right, that brings us to the end of this week's TechSNAP. If you'd like to submit stories to our roundup or maybe further up in the show, techsnap.reddit.com is the place to submit them. He's at Alan Jude on Twitter. I'm at Chris LAS. You can follow the network at Jupiter Signal. You can watch us live on Thursdays. Every now and then we have to adjust the time, but we're almost always live on Thursdays over at jblive.tv. And you can get it converted to your local time at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. And last but not least, you can just not worry about any of that crap and just subscribe to the RSS feed, and then you just get every show when we release it every single week. Okay, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in this week's episode of TechSNAP, and we'll see you right back here next week.